What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to my channel, 48 Views, and I hope you've had a great week. We are living in an exciting time as NBA free agency is in full swing, and in today's video, I want to share my thoughts on some of the biggest NBA free agency news from this week and grade some of the other trades we've seen so far. So, with that being said, let's get started. So, to kick things off for NBA free agency letter grades, I want to start with one of the biggest signings so far, which was Fred VanVLEET. VanVLEET was signed by the Houston Rockets for a staggering 3-year, $128 million contract, and this breaks down to about $42.8 million per year, which would have Fred VanVLEET comfortably sitting in the top 5 highest paid point guards, and where the numbers sit today, he'd be the 3rd highest paid point guard overall. I'm not sure how the Rockets plan to get the value from Fred VanVLEET that anyone would expect from a $42 million price tag, but he did average almost 20 points last year, playing about 36 minutes per game, which is nothing crazy to write home about. At a closer glance, looking at the Rockets roster, they have 7 guards now, so this acquisition at this price is completely puzzling to me. This, in my opinion, is an immense overpay, and I'd give this free agency signing by the Rockets an F. So the Rockets also picked up a forward who was waived by the Grizzlies and Dillon Brooks, but I'd give that acquisition a solid C, considering he's only capable of providing defense and he's making $20 million a year, which I think definitely is a questionable price for Dillon Brooks. Kyrie Irving was re-signed to the Mavericks for 3 years, $126 million, and this breaks down to about $42 million per year. My first initial thought is that in what world should Fred VanVLEET be worth more than Kyrie Irving, even considering all the shenanigans that Kyrie brings? I think I expected Kyrie to return to the Mavs, considering what they gave up to acquire him earlier this year or previous season, but the length of this deal really surprised me. I think when I take a look at the potential earnings, we can see that the max for Kyrie is around $50 million per year, and it makes more sense that as the Mavs avoid paying a premium dollar and Kyrie gets 3 years guaranteed money, this is a mutually beneficial deal for both sides. I do think the fit of Kyrie Irving and Luka can work because of the offensive brilliance and potential of both players, but it's still an odd fit considering that they're both at their best when they have the ball, and the other 3 players on the team would have to compensate for their defensive shortcomings. The Mavs did recently just pick up Grant Williams, who should help with overall defense, but it's clear their roster probably isn't finalized as rumors are circulating that the Mavs are supposed to part ways with a few more of their role players before the start of the season or once the season commences. Overall, I'd grade the Mavericks re-signing Kyrie with a B- and their acquisition of Grant Williams a B+. And the last thing I'll say about Dallas is that the Mavs certainly have an uphill battle going into the 2023 NBA season due to falling exceedingly short of expectations by missing the playoffs last year, which I personally did not expect. One of my favorite young players to watch is Anthony Edwards. So I had to share my opinion on his re-signing, and congrats to him for signing his 5-year deal extension with the Minnesota Timberwolves for $217 million. I'd give the Timberwolves a letter grade of an A+, simply because Edwards at this price will surely be a bargain 3 years from now, considering how good he is already and the price of talent like his is only increasing. This contract will actually increase to $260 million next year if Ant-Man makes the All-NBA team. And on that topic, he was asked by Bleacher Report what he thinks on that note, and he told Bleacher Report that his next step is to, I quote, kill everybody, unquote. Metaphorically speaking, of course. So I think it's fair to say that he plans on securing the total bag and earning a spot on the All-NBA team to go ahead and secure that full $260 million guaranteed contract. Now, outside of Anthony Edwards, more questions exist than answers for the rest of the Timberwolves roster, but I think that's a great place to leave things on Ant-Man's new contract with Minnesota. Now, most recently, you may have seen James Harden at the all-white party hosted by billionaire Michael Rubin in the Hamptons Monday before the 4th, but as many questions as that event generated, the biggest question that I have is where will James Harden land now that we know he wants out of Philly? While creating this video, I ran into an interesting article that suggested the Bulls have engaged in talks with Philly, and in the article, a trade between the 76ers and Bulls was suggested where the Bulls get Harden and Tucker, and basically the 76ers get Zach LaVine and Patrick Williams. Now, to me, the suggested trade is very intriguing for Philly, but for Harden, I can't see this being a more opportunistic chance to win a championship than playing in Philly with Joel Embiid. But let me know what you think. Is this trade one both teams should explore, or what other teams do you think will possibly get in the mix to try to trade for James Harden? Let me know what you think in the comments below. So the free agency news surrounding Damian Lillard and the Portland Trail Blazers has been heating up. And on July 2nd, Damian Lillard officially requested a trade from the Trail Blazers. I don't find this to be surprising, although you might if you thought Damian Lillard was going to die on the sword of irrelevancy. That analogy might be harsh, but the reality is the Portland Trail Blazers have struggled to find consistency and maintain relevance over the course of their last 5 seasons, with the exception of maybe the first 2. I credit this mostly to the Trail Blazers' inability to identify and surround Damian Lillard with talent, and at this point, I think it's best for both the Blazers and Dame to just go their separate ways. I think the story behind this relationship took a turn during the 2021 season when the Trail Blazers traded their second best player, CJ McCollum, for depth and draft picks. And what's crazy to me is that ever since, Dame has fought against the power of player mobility for at least 3 years now. And as he finally chooses to leverage that power, he does so in probably the worst way possible by limiting the options for teams that the Blazers have to work with. And he clearly wants to go to Miami, but I think publicly limiting his options to do that to just Miami significantly kills any leverage the Blazers could potentially have in a trade by dissuading any other team to jump in, thus making the entire league sour on the Dame business altogether. There is no grade to give at this time, obviously, as the story is one that still continues to develop at the timing and recording of this video. But I want to know what you all think. Where do you think Damian Lillard is going? Where do you think he'll land? And do you think the Blazers are forced to take whatever the Heat offer at some point if Dame continues to encourage other teams not to trade for him? Or do you think another team will just jump in the mix? Let me know what you think in the comments below. So in this video, we've unpacked a lot and reviewed some of the biggest stories in the NBA surrounding players who are not free agents, but nonetheless want out of their current teams. And we've graded some of the biggest contract signings in free agency so far. Before I wrap up the NBA free agency roundup for this week, there were also tons of other trades that were made amongst the bigger headlines, and I want to share my thoughts and my grade on some of those trades as well that maybe didn't get as much attention, but I still found interesting. So the first one I want to mention is Yuta Watanabe and Eric Gordon were signed by the Phoenix Suns. The money on these is a bargain at $5 and $6 million respectively, and I think these are the types of players the Suns should be acquiring to fill out their top-heavy roster. So I'd give the Suns an A- here, and I think it's fair to say that everyone is excited about seeing this team come together. The Bucks add Robin Lopez and Malik Beasley to add more size and depth. The Bucks deserve a B+ here for mostly just giving pure dedication to running the biggest front court in basketball and reuniting 2 NBA brothers in the Lopez bros. Malik Beasley adds depth, which seemed non-existent for the Bucks in the playoffs versus the Heat. And so I can't wait to see if the Bucks are able to bounce back and if this depth will allow them to do that in the upcoming season. The Warriors signed Dario Saric. And the Warriors have always struggled to find viable options for their front court outside of Draymond Green. And it's important to note that Saric just returned from an ACL tear in last year's season, so he could still be working back to what he was pre-injury in this upcoming season. Regardless, I like Saric for the Warriors. His skill set could be a real fit here as a true stretch 4. So I'd give the Warriors a solid B letter grade. That covers my view on NBA free agency for this week and all the excitement that entails. There will be more free agency movement to discuss as we draw closer to the start of the season. So if you enjoyed this content, don't forget to support this upload by subscribing to the channel and turning on your notifications, and be on the lookout for the next video. Lastly, if there's any free agency moves that you saw from this week that I missed, let me know in the comments below. With that, everyone stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.